guys, welcome back to my channel. So I noticed in my past holiday card videos, I never really shared how I make my actual card. So all I do is I take a piece of 9x12 watercolor paper and I cut it in half. And then I fold that half in half like a card, and then I just take a object like a paintbrush, as I'm doing here, and I just flatten out the crease. And that's basically how I get a little card shape. So to begin this one, because it is going to be a wet on wet type painting, I'm going to secure this to a board with some tape, just trying to keep the same amount of space on each side. And then I'm taking a large mop brush. These are great for just adding water to your paper and doing larger surface washes. So I'm just gonna take some clean water and I'm gonna start brushing that all over the paper so that it's nice and damp. And you don't want the paper to be like soaking in puddles of water. You just want like a wet sheen to the paper. Now I'm just taking cerulean blue mixed with indigo and I'm applying this on the top 3/4 half of the paper. Just kind of slopping that on with a number 12 brush. And then I'm adding darker spots of indigo, and then I'm adding a little bit of mauve as well for a little bit of pink interest in the sky. I'm taking a tissue now and I'm just blotting up some of those puddles of paint that I don't want to be so dark, and I'm also lifting off some of the color in the sky area just to give it a bit more light and dark contrast. I'm using a dry brush here as well to do the same thing. Now I'm just going to take my hairdryer and dry this a little bit. I don't want this to be completely dry because it will ruin the effect that we're going to do next. As you can see here, my paper is still a little shiny. Then I'm going to take a number 2, I think this is a number 2 or 3 brush, and I'm just taking clear water and dotting on little dots onto the wet paint. And what's going to happen here, since the paper is still wet, these little dots that I'm creating are actually going to bleed, and it's going to create some really cool snowflake effects. So I'm just going to continue adding those, and some of them are going to spread larger than the other ones, but I kind of really like the effect that it gives either way, so don't be too concerned about the size of the snowflakes. Once that's done, I'm just going to wet the bottom area here that I've left for the ground. And then I'm gonna start adding in little indications of snow. So I'm gonna mix up a little bit of blue, and I'm gonna do this very lightly. It's a very, very light wash, and the hand movements are very light. Basically just brushing the top of the paper as I do this. So I'm just going back and forth, creating horizontal lines and brush strokes to kind of give that impression of snow. Once your paper is dry, you want to mix up a green color. I've mixed up sap green with indigo blue for kind of a bluey green tone. And I'm just going to start by creating a very thin line for the trunk of my tree. This will just be a guideline for the branches. So you can place this wherever you want in your painting. I decided on this area here. And then with the very tip of my brush, by the way, this is a number 6 pointed brush. It's got a very fine tip, so it allows me to get those really, really fine strokes. I'm gonna, as always, list everything in the description below. And I'm just gonna create all of these little brush strokes in the shape of spruce leaves and branches, just to kind of mimic that feel of a spruce tree. The edges kind of sag down a little bit, so you might want to have like a slight curve to your brush strokes, and also in some parts they kind of flip up. So as you see me just doing this along the whole entire tree, and I'm adding different shades of green. I actually added in some indigo to give it more dimension. And then I'm doing the exact same thing on another tree that I decided to place right here, and I actually decided to put this kind of behind a little snowbank. You don't have to do this, but I just thought it looked good with the layout composition that I have now. And then in the background, I'm going to do some very faint little trees, and to do this, you just want to mix more water with your paint so that it's less concentrated. And I decided to just do 3 trees using the same techniques, but it's not going to stand out as much as the trees in the foreground. Going back to my blue mix and a light hand, I'm using that same brush and I'm just adding shadows to the snow behind the trees and just kind of giving that ground a little more detail. Now I'm going to take this Winsor & Newton white ink. You can also use a white acrylic, a gel pen, anything that's got a more opaque white. And you're just going to want to dab this on in clusters of snow to the branches, wherever you think your tree needs it. Remember that when you're looking at a tree, you're not just filling in the sides of the tree to make it two-dimensional. You're also going to want to put snow and different spruce leaves and things kind of coming towards you in the foreground so that it looks like an actual tree. Hopefully that made sense. So just using the ink, I'm doing the exact same thing here using a number, I think this is a number 2 brush. I can never remember if this is a 2 or a 3, but you're just going to want to continue doing this on all of your trees, even the ones in the background. And using that same ink and the same brush, I'm just going to add little snowflakes all over the sky and kind of in front of the trees. You could also do like a splatter effect if you wanted to, but I just wanted to be more precise with where my little snowflakes went, so I just used the tip of my brush. Now you could be totally done here, or you could take it a little step further with a touch more detail like I'm doing here. I'm using a fine detail brush, and I'm just using the same indigo and green mix that I used before, and I'm just kind of dragging out thin, short strokes, some of them overlapping some of that snow that I added onto the trees, and just making finer lines in the trees. It just gives it more detail, and you'll see once I finish this that it kind of just adds that extra little something. When your painting is totally dry, you can now remove the tape and expose that nice crisp border. I didn't write a message on the front of this card, which is totally up to you. If you want to add a message, you can do that, or you can just leave the inside blank and write a note to a special someone. So I hope you guys like this tutorial. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up. It really does help me out, and I will see you in the next one.